Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Monday. It's January 14th. This will be our chart lesson for today. And we had a nice uptrend today. It's kind of what you would expect. We had this gap. I mean, we even had a gap on the overnight chart here from where we closed previously. And usually these gaps close or fill pretty quickly. But even if you didn't look at this gap, if you consider the daily gap, the daily chart would have closed here and then reopened right here. So there's a big gap on the daily chart, and those gaps usually close pretty quickly. I mean, the market doesn't like gaps on a chart. I mean, if the market's really selling off, you might have one that it takes a while to fill, but generally, within a couple of three, generally on an overnight chart, it's going to fill that day. Not always, it's not 100%, but that's generally the rule of thumb. So a lot of times when you have this on the open or the overnight session, you prices will try to fill that during the day. And you can see they really struggled to get up there, and we didn't really quite fill that gap right there even yet because prices have really found some strong resistance right across here. And so that's what prices were attempting to do. And there's a two-tiered channel that's working higher here. You can see it. We finally get a break, a couple of swings up to a new high, and it tries to sell off, but it still hasn't really sold off. We just kind of continue to go sideways. And really from this point on, I would say right in here, you could trade this either way if you saw something you liked. Um, Notice that I don't really have much marked after about 11 o'clock. I just don't see anything in here that you really want to trade. By the time this triggers here to the upside, we've already had a break here and two legs up, so that's a little dangerous. And then by the time you wait on a short, it's you don't really get a short set up. So there's just not much up there in the afternoon. It was really kind of quiet and slow this afternoon, and it looks like the volatility, regardless, has slowed down a lot. Still a lot of volume here, but the volatility does not seem to be as great. So, but anyway, I'm going to back out. We'll talk about the trades and we'll wrap it up. I'm still not trading. I've taken a couple of trades here and there. Um, but it's hard for me to just sit and watch the chart with my eyesight the way it is. So I'm not in any rush to get back. I am enjoying kind of getting back to my regular routine, coming into the office and doing this mid-morning chart and watching the charts a little bit here and off and on. If I see something I really like, if I just happen to be looking at the chart when it happens, I may take a trade or two. But I'm not really back to trading yet, so that's the way I'll leave it. But anyway, I appreciate the emails and everybody's concern and asking about me and appreciate your prayers and your thoughts and all that good stuff. So anyway, let's talk about the trades. There was one right off the bat right here during the 7 o'clock hour. Notice we're working up. That's the first close outside, and you can see we've kind of gone sideways by this time. There might have still been a little bit of a downward bias, but when we pushed through that EMA, tried to go short once, then tried to go short twice, and bounced off that. You probably wouldn't have had that midline yet, but really what you're looking at is just playing this. You're looking for it to run to a new high. And there's actually a short right here. The only reason that I didn't mark that one, but I probably should because you're still really in the short mode here. But notice you work down first entry long, second entry long, it fails. And we did push back through and that's a big bearish bar. So if you went short right there, you're okay. I didn't mark it, but I probably should have at least made it green. But you really could argue for that to be red. So I'm going to go ahead and mark it, although I didn't originally mark it. Um, I was a little bit concerned about it because there's a double bottom here, but we did make a lower low here than here, and we do have a new high in place, just only by a tick or so, and that's what really worried me. But this is a failed second entry long, and that is a big bearish bar. So you could expect prices maybe to move forward, even though we did. There's a trend line. Let me back up just a hair. Maybe I should have talked about this. But there's a trend line working down overnight, and we do have a close outside a new low. So you're expecting a possible reversal. And we do have some resistance right across this area here. Only problem is we got a little support right across here too. So that's what worried me about that one. I mean, it's right there on the verge, but we'll leave it green. I mean, you could argue for it. So Of course, then we bounce, and I draw my trend line now, and I drag it up here and figure out where it's going to fit up here. And we run up. I don't really see anything long I like here at this point, but then we just kind of start going sideways. And at this point, notice that high, first entry. That's a second entry long, bouncing off this trend line and possible midline. You can see it's fitting. You could have that in there by now if you're pretty good at this. Although this is a little bit sideways, I wouldn't. It doesn't look as sideways at that point as it does a little bit later. But you can see right there. That's what it would have looked like on a live chart. And so that's where you would expect prices to bounce on the second entry with a bullish bar. I still kind of like that one. So I did give it a blue. Of course, we work higher and we get a double test here. There's a couple of opportunities that you may say, hey, I'd like to enter here, but you're right. That resistance is right there. Although we've already pushed through, you still notice how we got a little bit there and it comes back. And so I'd want a higher low here and most likely a higher low outside of this this little range, this tight range here. Now, I don't think you'd want to go short here, although this is a failed breakout. I'd want a lower high, and it doesn't come till here. So I don't think you want to go short. There's a higher low here. We pushed up, we come back, but we've already got a break of this, and we're real close to those highs. So I just don't know if, you don't know if you got enough room to get out. That's another possibility. We could at least probably holler, claim for it to be green. And now we're bouncing off this high, so we expect it to come back to at least the midline and maybe back down here. And that's what happens. We come back down, we bounce right off that midline, we come back and we break lower and test it again and close with a really nice bullish bar. Just go long right there. And as long as it stays in this upper half and keeps giving you good setups, you could keep taking it. But notice we pushed through here, and that's a little bit of an overshoot as well. We closed outside. So you could get a reversal. So you got to be careful about a reversal because sometimes you get an overshoot, you may not get a break in a new high. Prices are overdone and they start selling off and it just catches momentum. And it looked like that's what was going to happen here, but it didn't. So you just got to be real careful about, somebody asked me that today. Somebody asked about the trade right here too. And we'll talk about that in a minute, but let me explain this. You generally want to follow the rules and wait for your break and your new high, but none of this stuff is written in stone. If suddenly you start getting a trend that's going strong the other way, just because you don't have a break and a new high in place, go with it. If you get a new trend in the opposite direction, go with it. Just make sure it's that you're reading it right and make sure that it's truly working the other way and that the trend line is holding and that everything's in place. So I'll leave it at that. But some people just get too caught up and want to be too strict with the rules. And unfortunately, the way trading is, you just can't do that because nothing is 100%. Our rules will get you on the right side 80, 90% of the time, and that's all you need to make money. But if you try to stick with it rigid 100% on everything, you're just going to set yourself back and you're going to miss trades and you're going to take bad trades and you're going to be looking at things wrong. Just try to read the price and price action and understand prices are always trying to do something. Here we were trying to move higher to fill that gap today, most likely. Although we ran into strong resistance, but notice how it never could sell off either. We still kept working higher. And even now, we still haven't really sold off going in. We're just now going into the 3 o'clock hour. So, but back here, we talked about this trade. We're moving up. We push up again, and now we come through the midline. We'll see if it holds. There's a second entry right there, but because we just came off the high and we went through that EMA and that midline so easily, I'd be very leery of that trade. We're not back to the trend line. We're under the midline. We're under the EMA. I'd skip that trade. You could argue that it's a double test of this and it's a fairly bullish bar. So you could argue that there's some reasons to take it. I might mark it green, but I think that trade is too dangerous now. I want to see it come back to here or either get back in here and start holding up here again. And notice it does push up, but now it finally works lower. And somebody actually asked me about this trade, they actually had their trend line way up here somehow. Maybe they saw this as a spike in a channel, and it does look like that, but really your channel starts way down here. This is just two-tiered channel, and you can see how well that's holding. But their trend line was coming right across here, and they wanted to know why this trade, there's a second entry somewhere over here. Their chart looks a little different than mine on their price bars and all too, but notice we start working down, and so you want to wait till we get down here and wait for a setup. And notice we're coming down, you get a first entry, you're moving down, and you get a second entry right there on an inside bar. Not a very good setup, but we're not back to that trend line either. And we finally drop on down, and we do bounce off that trend line, and there's also some support here, but you got this little short-term channel working down, and you did have an overshoot. So I'd want to wait on a higher low or another bounce off this trend line or something. I don't think I would go long. Notice how we're all these closes are below that EMA as well. If you did go long right there, you just have to exit real quick. I'd have my stop down here, and I'd exit regardless, because it could just take off the other way. But his second entry was somewhere, I think he had a more bullish bar here instead of two bars, and when it broke higher, he went long and wanted to know why it failed. But his trend line was working right off of that, and then I'm not sure how he got that trend line, because it doesn't. You can see my chart. This is a midline up through here, and your trend line is off these first two swings. This is where, 99% of the time your trend line is going to be off your first two swings off the low, or your first couple of swings off the high. That's the way it works. Sometimes you'll find something a little different, but 90%, 95 plus to 99% of the time, that's the way it works. So, but if you got trapped here, you just got trapped. Then it works up, and you get a first entry short, a second entry short, and it fails. I marked this one. It is still below the EMA, but this has been a strong trend, and you would expect it to try to go higher, so you might take this one. This really ought to be green. I went back and forth with it, and now that I've had a time just glancing at it after just talking about everything, that probably ought to be green. But it's a failed second entry short. The only problem is you hadn't had a break of this trend line and a new low yet, but a lot of times you won't get that on a strong trend day, because it's just not going to push much lower. And plus, this was a failed break. This is why I did like this one. Notice that support across there. That's a failed break. Then you get a failed second entry short. But look how that closed inside that range area again, off the low. And it's look at that trend line working up, holding those prices. That's why I like that one. You got to be a little concerned about not having a break of this channel, but the trend, the trend and the bias are still up at this point. So that's why you risk long versus short. And that turns out to be a pretty good trade. You get another one here that's back inside the trend line. It's back above the EMA. It bounces off this trend line as well. It actually broke lower and turns and goes up. That wouldn't have been a bad place to go long. And I really thought it would go on up and make a new high there, but it doesn't. It backs up. It comes back. Prices will almost always come back and test these important support and resistance areas again. And then you get a double test here and another failed second entry short. And this thing went lower and bounced right off that support area and goes out the other side. That's a good place to go long. And I would look for at least a measured move at a minimum. And you can see that we basically got that almost to the tick. Would have got you right in the right area to where you might want to exit. And so now you've got a break of the two-tiered channel and two legs up. So, hey, this thing might reverse, but again, it bounces and goes higher. But I don't see anything that I like risking to go long here. We're still making lower highs and lower lows at this point. There is a failed second entry long here that you might have taken. Actually, that's not a failed second entry long. It comes down first entry, second entry. So it's not really a failed second entry long. You could, on a bigger picture, that's probably one leg with a correction. And so on a bigger picture, it might be, but I wouldn't trade that as a failed second entry long. It's a lot of sideways. Look how we're going sideways, and there's a doji in there. And that's what I told the guy about his setup over here. He had three or four or five bars stacked up there and a doji right in the middle. And that's all. A doji's a one bar trading range. And when you see one and you start to see bars stack up like that, just sit tight because it's going to play out like a range. You'll get a failure out each side probably, and then it's going to take off with a bias again most likely. And notice what we really get here is just two legs down, and then you start going higher again. So it's probably tempting to go long there. That's a big bullish bar after two legs down, and if you measure that, it's probably pretty much a measured move. You can see that. And then, so again, that's one you could probably argue to be green. Shoots on up. No more entries here, and then we're working down again, and we're really getting back in this range. It'd be nice if you had a good signal bar here to go short, but you don't. You get a doji. That's a perfect doji basically. So again, not a great place to go short. I don't want to go long there either, but now you get two legs down and it bounces, but there's no real setup down here either. Your signal bar is very bearish there, and you don't get if you draw your trend line, you never really get a break lower or setup to get in it there. And you don't want to chase a trade ever, because as soon as you decide, hey, it's going to keep going higher and you get in, that's what happens right there, and you get burned. And that got you into the 2 o'clock hour. So there just wasn't much. I mean, really, till about 11 o'clock, it looked great, and then there wasn't anything happening after that. So, and we really just spent the whole afternoon. Really, we spent most of the trading day. This thing started right over in here about, I'd say 9 to 9:30, and we really spent the whole day in that trading range. We failed out both sides a couple of times, but other than that, it's just a trading range day. And you can tend to trade this both ways when it's a range. But I believe the dominant pattern, let me back out a little bit here, was this two-tiered channel working higher, and I believe we were trying to fill the gap on the charts. So generally, if you're not going to continue higher, what will happen is you'll come up here and you'll correct about 50 to 75% of this move down, and then suddenly you'll turn down and you'll get a measured leg down similar to this leg down. Or if you were going up, you could just reverse that, and that's generally what's going to happen. Either you're going to try to fill that gap, or you're going to fail somewhere up here and get another leg down. And today we were trying to fill that. We were trying to fill that gap. So anyway, not a lot of trades. It wasn't the best trading day, but it was all uphill. So if you were just patient, the one thing is you didn't get a lot of trades off this key entry point here. Most of them were off of the midline. And you got a couple after you got the break trying to ride to the new high. So not a lot of trades today. Just was one of those days. And you'll have days like that, and tomorrow you might have 50 trades. You just never know with the when you're trading the ES, that's kind of the way it works. So, but anyway, I hope you had a good trading day. I'm going to wrap it up. We'll come back and do it again tomorrow, but I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.